Hello, Reconsider. Welcome back. So delving a little bit more into my time at Contact in the Desert, I mentioned in the summary video I was looking to expand on some of the topics explored during the conference. This particular movie vignette I will be exploring the potential history of a secret space program. So what is the secret space program? This is the idea that for a long time certain groups have been developing a highly covert, incredibly sophisticated space program that has the capacity to visit deep space with well-established numerous off-world stations and bases. Now this is a highly contentious area at the moment. Some individual commentators and whistleblowers have disagreed and rejected the developing new secret space program intelligence as disinformation. One of the first talks I attended was Michael Salla. This ignited a whole shed of fireworks in my brain. It was amazing to listen to him discussing with academic integrity and vigour the historical development of the secret space program. Michael Salla had a highly respected mainstream academic career researching and teaching conflict resolution for a major university in the US. He's been one of the first scholars to really research deeply into the origins and ongoing developing scope of the secret space program. His research consists of mainstream sources along with other evidence from whistleblowers such as William Tompkins and Goode. To keep everything concise, I'm summarising his talk. He went obviously into a lot more detail over the 2-hour lecture period. He started this discussion introducing a short potted history of the secret space program. Salla speculates that its origins can be traced to various German secret societies such as the Vril Society, which apparently had a very occult element to it. They became very interested in ancient Babylonian and Sumerian theologies. Using their theories in ancient texts, they start to develop a very advanced propulsion and anti-gravity systems as far back as the 1920s. They were able to develop up to 30 different prototype crafts. So stop, okay, I know this is crazy. I can hear you thinking, this information is intense and involves technology that boggles the mind now, in 2017. Remember, this is nearly 100 years ago. The German secret societies, of course, were made up of some very wealthy individuals that had links to very wealthy industrialists. Salla's claimed that it was actually these industrialists and secret societies that allowed Hitler to come to power. As many of you know, the Nazis were actively fusing esoteric thinking with mainstream science, which actually allowed them to make huge strides in scientific technology and knowledge. This is where William Tompkins comes into the frame. During World War II, there were just under 30 US spies embedded in various positions within the German aerospace industry. It's Williams' job to take the intelligence received from these covert German operatives and create neat little briefing packets. These briefing packets were sent to senior figures within the Navy, but also to various US-based aerospace companies for them to decipher and obviously start to try and match and engineer their own technologies. This is where many people within the Navy really had a problem accepting some of the information due to the fantastical nature of what they were hearing from these briefing packets. They started to receive reports that the Germans were actually now working reptilian-based extraterrestrials in Antarctica. Again, this narrative can feel overwhelming now. Can you imagine how people received it back then? So we can fast forward a little. World War II ends. The Allies supposedly had won the war. The US then sends a task force to Antarctica because they know the Germans' premier advanced technology and propulsion base is under the ice in Antarctica. At this point, the Antarctic base is made up of the elites of the German secret societies and senior Nazis. They have now been able to weaponize the advanced craft. The US incursion into Antarctica is a complete disaster. The German weaponry and flying technology is far too advanced for the Americans. Even though overtly it appears that the Allies now have complete control over German society, this new potential historical timeline suggests a very different picture. The Antarctic Germans realise their obvious dominance technologically, and so to assert authority and control they perform a flyover the White House in Washington with their advanced craft. In an attempt to intimidate and demand a settlement, it worked. After negotiations, President Truman signed a treaty essentially allowing top Nazi scientists and officials to be put into key scientific and aerospace positions via Operation Paperclip. Salas and many others have claimed that in essence the US and allies in a way lost the war, creating a kind of Fourth Reich from within the US. He also goes on to claim that the Earth is being used by various ET species to push a particular agenda, with the reptilians pushing for a universal deep space dominance in a negative way. As a positive counterpoint to the reptilians, a particular race of Nordic ETs chose to start and work with the US Navy to develop interstellar technology. He namely singles out a chap called Howard Menges, who apparently had contact with Nordic ETs throughout his life and actually assisted the Nordics in infiltrating human society. Michael did also mention that it was the opinion of other Nordic races that as a civilization we should really be concentrating on raising our vibration and consciousness first before developing interstellar capacity. So that's the US Navy. What about the US Air Force? Well, apparently the Air Force does have its own space program, but it's dramatically less sophisticated compared to the Navy. The Air Force has mainly been preoccupied with surveillance and lacks the deep space capacity the Navy has mastered. So that towards the end of his talk really started to paint a very complex picture of duality that exists in the universe, and this complexity is being carried out on Earth. It's a deeply multifaceted story with many groups, all with their own competing ideology and competing technologies. Apparently there are 40 to 50 human ET races, which are all part of a loose super federation. So, what of today, the present? If your minds aren't already suitably twisted into an intergalactic knot, he finished with some very topical updates. He claimed Russia is now working with the Nordics. They are all part of the alliance, which at this very moment is involved in the struggle to control Antarctica. Again, I should stress that it is Michael Salla's opinion, deciphered from researcher Tompkins and Goode, that the USA is in fact part of a pseudo Fourth Reich controlled by the cabal, and Russia appears to be working for the alliance. And in fact, the late Edgar Cayce, a psychic who famously gave 10,000 psychic readings across many subjects, predicted that Russia would be the hope for the future. So that was my experience of Michael Salla. Moving on to David Wilcock, who was pretty prolific at Contact in the Desert. He had numerous lectures, workshops and panels. As most of you know, his spread of information encompasses many areas, but keeping it on topic of the secret space program. On one of David Wilcock's panels, they mention a craft known as the TR-3B, which has recently been declassified. It utilises some very sophisticated propulsion technology and anti-gravity. But the unknown source is rather strange and stems from Puerto Rico, from an unknown individual who released the patent. This individual strangely has also released patents for extraterrestrial channeling machines. All very strange indeed. Now on to one of Wilcock's close friends and main secret space program insider, Goode. Again, he was present at many various talks and workshops. At one of his lectures he described how he was recruited into the MyLab program from as young as 6. His abilities were enhanced artificially. His first military posting was working as an intuitive empath as a teenager. Empaths were used apparently to spot deception and discover true intent during meetings between people and other ET races. This is one of his many held positions during his 20-year stint in the secret space program. I was also able to attend a presentation by a lady called Melinda Leslie, who claims to have been abducted throughout her life due to her psychic abilities. She also claims that she was also recruited into the MyLab program, but this time against her will. She had abortions to extract human hybrid fetuses and has been visited and tested numerous occasions by extremely aggressive covert military groups. Her view on the topic is that they are creating sophisticated human hybrids to interface with some very sophisticated ET technologies. It should be noted that her story tallies also very well with other MyLab recruits. Bringing it back down to earth, I was able also to hear Nick Pope, who previously worked for the UK Ministry of Defence UFO Research Department, and who very much still maintains his British Secrets Act oath. He did divulge though that in the course of his short 4-year tenure, he met many people with security clearances he'd never even heard of. And most of them tended to work for private contractors, because in the private sector, it's easier to hide from transparency that is supposed to operate in the overt government institutions. So that rather quickly covers information snippets, providing some potential evidence for the secret space program. Obviously you'll have to discern for yourselves what you consider to be true or not be true. But from me, thanks for watching. Reconsider. Bye bye.